Recently, I took a Yale course on Introduction to Psychology, and one of the last things that we learned there was happiness. And I never actually considered that that is such a complex and large topic. And there's not only like a gratitude list to increase your happiness level, and that there's so much to the happiness level that you have right now. So, the first thing I want to do is I want to ask you to rank your happiness level from 1 to 10. Was your answer 7 or 8? Well, that is an average answer. And there was a study conducted where they asked a lot of people to do that, to rank their happiness, and the average was, I think, 7 or 7.5. There are a lot of influences that influence how you answer this question, but it's interesting that it's never 10. Like, people almost never chose 10 because in our head we think that there will be better, that the things you're working towards, once you will reach them, it will be better, and you don't think that you will necessarily be happier, but you think that that would help in the future. Also, it's interesting that your answer on lifelong happiness can be swayed by just like little moments. Long story short, they just tested people and asked their happiness level, and half of them before that found a dime and half of them didn't. And that one little thing, like it's a dime, it's it's not like they won a lottery or something, but that changed their perception of their happiness level. And that is also true when, for example, people are asked about their happiness level on sunny weather, and whether they ask about it in a very rainy, cloudy, maybe cold weather. Then people in the sunny weather obviously answer higher than people who are asked in a cloudy weather. But when they are made known about this, like, there's like weather outside, it could influence what your answer is, because they become more aware of it, they calibrate their answer to and like even it out. So even like small things can sway our perception of happiness, and we will get back to that later. But yeah, that's like an interesting fact. So basically, the whole reason why we even like strive to be happy, or like why happiness is such a big topic in our lives and everything, it's not only for us. We were wired to feel happy because happiness means that our basic needs are fulfilled. So like roof over our head, food, comfort. There's even a nice quote by Steve Pinker, and he says, "We are happier when we're healthy, well-fed, comfortable, safe, prosperous, knowledgeable, respected, non-celibate, and loved." So if you look at your life and you can tick off all these boxes, by his opinion, you should be pretty damn happy. But the thing is, we're not happier than the people that were living when they didn't have any hot water, or when they were living in caves, or when they didn't nearly have as much comfort and as much accessibility to comfort as we have right now. Even though right now we live in best possible conditions, we still are not happier. We're not happier than we were 200 years ago, 1,000 years ago, and so on. And that is quite interesting. Because right now, more and more people can tick off all these boxes than the people, for example, 100 years ago. But our happiness level doesn't change. Like, if you look at it, our life gets better, but our happiness level doesn't change. So to explain these facts and learn a little bit more about happiness and what makes us happy, what can cultivate happiness in one's lives, blah, 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 we have to keep in mind that happiness doesn't change as much as we think. Because each of us has a set point of happiness. It's heritable. For example, there was a study, or it's just like, not a study, but like a thing that was there. They took two identical twins, and they were raised in different environments by different families with completely different situations, and their happiness level was the same. So if I were to tell you to imagine the worst possible scenario that could happen to you, and I would ask you, do you think it would change your happiness level? You would say yes, of course. And if I were to do vice versa and ask you, imagine the best thing could possibly happen to you, would that change your happiness level? And of course it would. You know, in our mind, it's not a tough call. It's like super obvious that would change. But the thing is, you won't. One of the primary examples that were given in the lecture was the worst scenario, getting paralyzed, and the best scenario is, for example, winning a lottery. And as it turns out, your life doesn't change as much. So when these things happen, there a certain period of time of which your happiness level could increase or decrease. But then you get back to that set point. And we will talk about that later, because there are also like examples of people who spend 30 years in prison and they say, oh, you know, that was the best time in my life. And that is crazy. Like, people who also were wrongfully accused and were in prison for like 35 years, and they come back, they don't say, oh, well, they had a nice gym, it was nice, I had to just endure it. No, they say it was awesome, it was magnificent, and it was glorious, you know, and there are actually cases like this. But before that, as I said, it doesn't matter what happens in your life, what kind of event, the worst, the best, the like mediocre or something, we have a threshold for happiness, and it tends to get back to it, to that threshold of happiness that you have. The next thing is that we get used to both positive and negative events in our life, and we just sometimes tend to overlook how relevant the certain situation is in our life and how it affects our life. For example, election. In US, their election primarily between two people, and so, for example, if you're voting for one person and you think that, oh, if this person wins, I will have just like, I will be so mad, I'll have like a horrible life, I don't want to do that, I will be so sad, I will be so mad, I will be furious. But the research shows that it doesn't really influence your today life. You know, like in the heat of election, you think so, that it would be like so strongly you think about this, but like, in your everyday life, it doesn't really affect you, and you don't really notice it. You know, you still need to do laundry, to buy groceries, do this and this and this, and seldomly you are reminded who is, you know, in White House and who is doing that or that or that. But in the long run, it doesn't really influence your happiness. So we, not only in election, it's just like one of the things, but we tend to think too much of a thing that is like completely irrelevant to our happiness, just because it's right now in our life, and we think that it will be so great if that would happen, or like so bad if that would happen. But most of the things are just irrelevant to our happiness level and irrelevant in our day-to-day life. So that is the thing. We just get used to both positive and negative events, because if you win a lottery, your happiness level will be increased to up to a year. You will inevitably get to that threshold, or even earlier, because you have to do things. You have to deal with your family, have to do everyday activities, still have fights with your partner or like your friends, or all the things and all the problems that you had in your life. Maybe they, like the money that you won, facilitated a little bit, but it's not magically gonna turn around your life because you are the person who is like leading your life. So basically you're returning to the threshold. And the same is like with bad things. We also get used to bad things, and that's sad. Sure, we get used to good things faster because we don't fight against them, but we also get used to bad things as well. So the second one is, basically I overlapped and talked about it, we adapt to things. It's a very nice thing that our brain does. It's called habituation. So basically if you come into a room with the air conditioning and it's like very noisy, in a couple of minutes you will not even hear that noise. Like you will not even be perceptive to that noise, because your mind adapts to it in order to catch on different sounds. So for example, you hear this sound, but if you hear like an odd sound that is not like air conditioning, your attention will be up to that sound. And that is how our brain basically keeps us aware of new different things that possibly could be threatening to us. And that habituation also works in these situations. So for example, if you have something good, you're on vacation for like 2 weeks, and for half a year you're just like, oh man, I can't wait to go there, it's such a nice place, it's such a beautiful place. And then you kind of get there and you find yourself surrounded by problems also. You're like, oh, my partner and we are fighting, or it's too hot here, or you know, some other things, and you find a reason to complain, and you get used to these beautiful views that you are at, because in your mind you have problems. You always have problems, and we get used to it. That's actually a very sad thing, this habituation, because of like all the good things it takes away from us, but it's a very vital and important part of our life, because without it, if something would drop and we just wouldn't, you know, take notice or something, or we would just like be constantly aware of everything, that would be too overwhelming for our brain, and that would just like require too much of work here. And there's also such a thing, there's a name to it, it's called hedonic treadmill. There's a book in the Bible, Ecclesiastes, and the man who is writing it is a very rich king. So he has all the money, he has a lot of properties, he has everything he wants, you know, flock, everything at that time that you would want, he has. But if you ever read Ecclesiastes, you know that he writes basically that everything is meaningless, that everything is meaningless under the sun, that we're all gonna die, that, you know, he just, it's the most pessimistic book in the Bible, and he has everything. Like, what he's gonna complain about? And hedonic treadmill is that thing that doesn't matter how much good events are happening to you, or how bad events are happening, how many bad events happening to you, you are just get used to it. Like, your happiness level doesn't change that much. If, for example, he started off as like not as rich, and he gathered the richness and money and properties and everything that would make him happy, like in a way, and he just reached hedonic treadmill. Everything is meaningless. That is his set point of happiness. There's also a third reason, the psychological immune system. Basically, this idea, the Gilbert's idea, it's much more complex, and maybe I'll do a video about this, but there's like a natural happiness, and there's synthetic happiness. And synthetic happiness is when we deliberately like find good moments, even like in bad moments. And natural happiness is when we will happy because good things happen to us. And understandably so, society likes natural happiness more, because the synthetic is like faking and it's not like true or something. So yeah, that is the third idea. And there are a couple of nice quotes, because I love quotes. If you don't like quotes, well, you'll have to endure or just skip forward. So there is an amazing quote by John Milton. He says, "The mind is its own place, and in itself can make a heaven of hell and hell out of heaven." And there's a Shakespeare, "For there is nothing either good or bad, but thinking make it so." The second one is that happiness is absolute and relative. So there's also a very nice quote by Mencken, who wrote, "A wealthy man is one who earns $1,000 more than his wife, sister, husband." And what that means is that we tend to think relatively. And if I would ask you a question, would you rather earn $70,000 when everyone else in your niche or in your office in the same job field kind of thing earns 65, or would you rather earn $75,000 when everyone earns 80? And that is no brainer, because if you're gonna think logically, well, it's much better to earn 10 grand more, and you know, people would just earn 5 grand more than you. But we are very social creatures, and a lot of people would choose, like, even if not in this instance you think that it would be better, we think that it, like, we are better in terms of relativity to other people if, for example, we're earning more than them, even if that's not more than we could earn. It's just like, we're better than people in our office, we're better than, you know, people in my town, I earn more than them, and we just think in this relativity, because if someone else earns more than us, we just inevitably think as failures and that we're not doing more or something like this. So happiness is relative. One measure, one way to predict how happy somebody is not merely through absolute income or absolute status in the world, but where they stand relative to other people in their circle. And the third one, and the last one, is that our judgment about pleasure and pain of past is somewhat skewed. So for example, if I would tell you, would you rather, like, there's A and B, would you rather endure something very painful in an hour and then it stops? Or would you endure something very painful for an hour and then for the last, like, an hour, and then 5 minutes in the end, it is mildly painful? and it ends. So basically it's like an hour and 5 minutes, and you don't have to be a mathematician to realize that, yeah, I would rather have something less painful, not like less painful, but like something that lasts less. And if I were to ask you, which one would you enjoy more? Like a party that's doing great, it's an amazing party, like the party is amazing, everything that you could ever imagine, the people are great, but it ends horribly. It just ends horribly. Someone, I don't know, almost drowns in the pool, or the fight breaks up. Well, yeah. Or an awful party, but ends great. You kiss someone they had a crush on, or you get an opportunity that you were looking for, or it just ends amazingly. And the thing is, for our brain, the ending is so, like, it's vital. So with the pain reference, when I was listening to the lecture and I was like, reading, and I was like, that is crazy. Like, I would not choose to suffer an hour or 5 minutes rather than an hour. But with party example, I'm like, yeah, I would, like, logically, sure, it's much better when a party goes on for 2 hours, like, great, good, and then 5 minutes something bad happens in the end, rather than endure a bad party for 2 hours and then only like 5 minutes of good thing. But in my mind, I think it's better, like with party example at least, that when it's ends good. Because for some reason, for our minds, endings are crucial. How things end, that how we perceive the whole thing. So even though you might not logically choose to endure an hour and 5 minutes of pain, because the pain in the end is milder, you will view that experience as more positive one, rather than a shorter but painful more experience. So this is all I had for you for today about happiness. Hopefully you enjoyed, you got something out of it. And actually there's much more about happiness, because as I said, there's natural happiness and there's synthetic happiness. I'm not gonna spoil too much. I think I will make like a second version of this, but here's some interesting facts about happiness. Hopefully you enjoyed it. See you in the last one. I'll see you in the next one.